What is going on, everybody? It's Mr. Uzi here, and iOS 8 launched yesterday. A lot of people had trouble downloading it because they had to delete stuff from their phones. It was 1.4 gigabytes, but it required somewhere around 5 gigabytes of open space. So for people on 16 gigabyte models of iOS devices, that was really difficult because that 16 gigabytes, it goes by really fast. So I was able to download it on an old iPad 2, which is still supported by iOS 8. And this video is to cover some of the features that I found interesting that you may also find interesting at request of somebody on Twitter, which you can also do if you want to request a video to be made. Hit me up on Twitter at Uzi, 4 O's, Z, then an I. So let's begin. So to start off, let's talk about photography on iOS 8. The iPhone camera, iPad camera not so much, but the iPhone camera has been renowned for having very good quality, and now in iOS 8 they allow you to take advantage of that. They give you much more features in the camera app, such as white balance, exposure, ISO, and all of these different features that a lot of you'd find on maybe a point and shoot or maybe even a DSLR camera. And these features are now available in the camera app as well. So the next feature that I found really interesting is continuity, or the handoff system, where if you're doing something on one device, say you're sending a text message, reading a web page, or using a specific app, and say you're doing something on one device and you migrate to a different device, say from a tablet to a desktop, so from an iPad to a Mac, you can continue doing what you were doing on either device seamlessly through continuity, or the handoff system that Apple has introduced. Now, this feature is available on iPads and iPhones, but since OS X Yosemite has not been released for Macs yet, the feature is not completely there, but that operating system should be released very soon. This is about the time of the year when new operating systems come from Apple. Now, this next feature is a little interesting. I feel like Apple has been trying to hold off doing this for a while now, but they're allowing third-party keyboard support in iOS 8. So if you're not happy with the stock keyboard coming with iPhones and iPads, you can change it to something that maybe a third-party developer that you like is creating. For example, I downloaded SwiftKey onto an iPad, and while I don't necessarily use an iPad or use Apple devices, it's nice to be able to have something familiar because I do use SwiftKey on my Android phone. So it's nice to be able to have that same keyboard experience across the board. Other keyboards include Swipe. Those are the two that I'm really familiar with that are on iOS, but now that Apple has kind of opened the doors for third-party keyboards, you can just imagine how many developers are going to try and get their keyboard either from Android onto iOS or from other platforms onto iOS, because that just gives them more exposure. And thumbs up to Apple for doing this. Along the lines of keyboards, we also have predictive typing. Now, predictive typing is not the same as autocorrect. Autocorrect will try and correct the word that you're using based on what you've typed. Predictive typing will try and predict the next word based on contextual evidence. Predictive typing is something great to have. Android has had it. I love it on Android, so I'm glad that iOS is now adopting that feature. Continuing on the topic of messaging, we are now able to send self-destructing audio and video. So maybe there's a funny video of something that happened at some event somewhere at some time, and you wanted to send it to a friend or two, and you may not want that video floating around for everybody in the world to see. You can set it to delete itself after a certain allotted time period, similar to how you would do so on Snapchat, except this one's a little more direct. So this feature has been added also for audio. These things will be deleted after a certain amount of time. So if you want to send a funny clip, audio or video, whatever, it'll be able to self-destruct after a given amount of time. Apple released a feature to developers which enabled them to use Touch ID to lock specific apps. Now, this feature wasn't widespread. Many developers didn't take advantage of it, but now in iOS 8, they've expanded it to more apps and more developers if they so choose to use it in their apps. So pretty much what this means is, if say I had email, say you have an email, you're in a business, and those emails don't need to be read by the average person. Maybe there's very sensitive information in those emails and you don't need everybody to see them or be able to access them easily. You can enable the feature where you can use your fingerprint through Touch ID to lock that app. So whenever when somebody is trying to open the app, they'll be required to press down their finger to unlock it. It is locked and it will only be opened by the fingerprint. And this can be done for specific apps, including messaging, email, calendar, contacts. Now, this feature is meant for enterprise only. I'm not sure if it will be out for the consumer market, but the feature is available to developers to use, so it's whether or not they want to put them in those apps. Anyway, those are the features that I found interesting in iOS 8. I don't normally use iOS devices, so these features aren't necessarily surprising for me, or I'm not very excited about them. A lot of them have been on Android, but I'm not hating on iOS for being a little late to the game, but it is nice to see that they are adapting these things to their operating system and making them streamlined and well integrated. Now, if there are features that I didn't mention in this video that you found interesting, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I'd love to hear them. iOS 8, according to Apple, was the largest iOS update ever, which is what they said about iOS 7 last year, so I'd imagine that that's going to be the same thing for the next upcoming updates. But again, if there's a feature that I didn't go over, be sure to leave that in the comments below. Tell me about your experience downloading iOS 8, because downloading it, you required so much space on your phone, and it was only a 1.4 gigabyte update, but you had to delete pictures, video, apps, all of these different things just to install this update. I saw people completely restoring their phones to factory settings just to get this update installed. So just tell me about your experience downloading iOS 8. If you haven't downloaded it yet, the servers are probably really free right now because a lot of people upgraded to iPhone 6s, which also released today, September 19th, and they're already pre-installed with iOS 8. So many people are not going to be downloading it today. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, hit that like button down below. Be sure to share it with somebody. Maybe it might convince them to go buy an iPhone, because there are some features that were on Android that are now on iPhones. So that may have been the only reason why they haven't gotten one yet. Who knows? But thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more content from this channel. This is Mr. Uzi signing off, and I'll see you guys in the next video.